Hallo Gaarsten agus faaltje, tang voorers on chien, ha anas a habi feichen, a durit de goonje as hitchenakin. Welcome friends, welcome to the Argyll Food Festival. I'm just saying, it's very strange to see this many people in the kitchen. Don't worry, I saw a few panicked faces there, people thinking, oh crumbs, is he going to speak in Gaelic all the way through? But no, but we always like to welcome people to events for the Hebridean Baker in Gaelic, so faaltje. I know that you're all here to really hear this man speaking, so without further ado, Peter McQueen.
Good to see you all. Faaltje, what a gang, what a gang. Is there nothing to do on a Sunday in Oban? You must be desperate to come and see me. No, you don't. Okay. Well, honestly, great to see you all, and thanks so much for coming. For those of you who don't know, I'm Conneach, the Hebridean Baker, and today we're going to do a recipe from my second book. If you pass it to me, I'll show it to you. The reason I say second is that my third book is coming out next month. I'm going to do one for my second book, because hopefully, thank you very much, this is my second book. Well, this is a question. Who's got my first book? Who's got my second book? Who's shouting me? Stuart. Well, there is some, I do have some for sale afterwards, so for those of you who don't, or so those of you who do, you can buy this. But what I'm going to do today, I love to have simple recipes with Scottish flavors or traditional recipes. That's my absolute favorite thing to do, is firstly to find recipes that maybe have been a wee bit forgotten in time. If anybody is a kind of cookbook fiend, has anybody heard of The Scots Kitchen by F. Marion McNeill? Have you got that one? It's a great book, isn't it? And I wouldn't say I've stolen some of her, inspired by F. Marion McNeill. F. Marion McNeill wrote her book in 1929. She was living in Orkney at the time, and her dad was a minister, wasn't he?
From Islay, yeah.
From Islay.
She was half Islay, half Orcadian.
Oh, I didn't know that. And she went round Scotland in 1929 with a concern that we were starting to lose the stories and recipes then of Scotland. So, and I can't say that I would love to think I'm trying to do the same thing, but I do, as I said, love to put some traditional recipes in there. So we're going to do I wouldn't say this is traditional, but it's nearly hot toddy season, isn't it? So I'm going to make my hot toddy bundt cake, okay? And so it is a lemon and heather honey cake. I'm going to do a whiskey icing on top. Optional, of course, because it is Sunday, so we can't all have a dram. But that's what I'm going to make for you today. And Peter, you're going to chat while we do this.
I think I should be here to lick the spoon if there's a spoon coming, and I'll ask him a few questions. And at the end, we'll open the floor, and you can ask Conneach questions as well. But
good point. Well, this is important here, actually. So I'm the cake baker in the family. This is a very important role, the cake taster. So who are the bakers in the room?
Who are the cake tasters? Hey!
Definitely there seems to be more cake tasters in the room. A very, very serious job indeed, being the cake taster.
I was skinny before he started being a Hebridean Baker, but nobody would buy his book if I was too thin. So, Conneach, before you start baking, just tell us a wee bit about where you come from, the Isle of Lewis and your village of Cromore.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Now that we're down in Oban today, but who's been to the Outer Hebrides? Who's been to the Isle of Lewis? Who's been to the area of lochs in Lewis? Oh my God! Who's been to Cromore? What? Who's been to my house? Am I related to anybody here? That's probably the question I should be asking just before I start telling stories. Well, yes, I'm from the village of Cromore, which is a wee village, certainly off the beaten track. But the great thing about the village Cromore, it kind of ties in two parts of our history. The Gaelic part of our history and the Viking part of our history, because the island was part of Norway for 200 years. And cro is the old Norse word for a cow. And more is big. So I'm from Big Cow. The next village is Cropik, which is Wee cow, exactly. So I was always quite proud that the Vikings thought we had bigger cows than the next village. But it's a very pretty wee village. But the island itself is stunning. If you haven't been, it really is a very, very special place to come. We are very proudly Scottish, but we are a wee bit different. So you really kind of encapsulate the kind of culture of the island, be it maybe if you haven't heard the Gaelic language before, hearing Gaelic, going to the center of a 5,000-year-old stone circle, visiting a black house for the first time, our traditional housing on the island, Taitui, as we call it in Gaelic, but great food. And I think that's one of the biggest changes I've seen over the past 20 years, is I would say if you went to Stornoway or the island maybe 10, 15 years ago, and you went for dinner, you'd go to the Cabernet Hotel. Nothing wrong with the Cabernet Hotel, but you go to the Cabernet Hotel and you'd have soup, meat and potatoes, and a sponge and custard. That would be your dinner every night. But now the
Doesn't sound that bad.
It doesn't sound that bad, no. But now the great thing is there's great variety on the island. And I know we have some visitors going to the island quite soon, and I was recommending a few things. Everything from, there's a fantastic pizza takeaway in a shipping container in Achmore, literally the middle of nowhere. So you can go with something as simple as that. One of my favorite restaurants, if you want a treat, is Uig San's restaurant on the west coast of the island. Book ahead, but it really is very special. So the difference now, I feel, we are taking advantage of the amazing food and stories we have on the island. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who do like a dram, today I'm using Jura whiskey because I love it. But did anybody manage to get a bottle of the Heroch? You did? Well done. So the Isle of Harris Distillery launched its first whiskey on Saturday, which is really exciting for the island. And I also managed to get a couple of bottles, which I'm really excited about. So heading to a distillery is a really special thing to do in the islands as well. So I'm going to start. Now, this is a very simple recipe indeed, but I think it's one that really suits what I do. It's simple, but it's very flavorsome, easy to make and put together, and the ingredients are very easy as well. So you're going to tell a story while I do this part, but it's simple, kind of cream your butter and sugar first, like you do in pretty much every start of a sponge mix. Now, I've got golden caster sugar here. Doesn't matter what type, classic, simple caster sugar, golden caster sugar, whatever you have. Golden caster sugar simply has a little bit of molasses in it, black treacle in it. So it has a little bit more of a caramelly flavor compared to classic caster sugar. What do you call caster sugar in America? Is it
granulated sugar?
Right, or is it called Baker's? No, is it sometimes called Baker's sugar or?
No, you've got confectioners.
Confectioner. Yeah, so, right. This is the thing. I do get. Can you imagine what? Right. I'm going to do this, but then talk at the same time. Yes. Hi. What do you think the main question I get asked from Americans on Instagram is? What do you think? Oh, I can't do cups. Cups stress me out. I've got big cups, wee cups, every cups. No, that's close, but there's another question.
What kind of mixer do you use?
That's a good question, yes, and it is maison cache, which I do like. But the number one question I get from Americans is, what's golden syrup?
Necessary for
very
pancakes.
Necessary. And they say, can I use maple syrup? You can, but it's not the same. Can I use corn syrup?
No.
No, you can't. And it isn't that difficult to get, actually, in the US. What's it called again? World Market, if you know a World Market. Or
there's an amazing company called Scottish Gourmet USA.
Yes, Scottish Gourmet
They
USA.
deliver all over the US.
Yes, so don't worry. But for those of us from home, it would be impossible to have a kitchen without black treacle and golden syrup. It's the base of nearly every cake or bake that we have.
Do we still have some more seats up the back? Do the folk that are standing want to come on in and come on in and join the ceilidh?
You're more than welcome to. So again, for those of you who are maybe budding bakers or maybe haven't done too much baking before, it's not a mistake, but one thing that's quite common to do is you think that, once you're putting your cream and the butter and sugar together, all you're trying to do basically is get it combined. But actually, you're trying to stretch the sugar. You're trying to kind of blitz the sugar into the butter for a better term. So I recommend doing this for up to 2 to 3 minutes, okay? It's going to make it a little bit fluffier, a little bit lighter, and this is where the sugar does all the hard work in here as well. So really do give it a little bit of time. One thing, Peter, you do that for a second. No pressure.
Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Mum's in the front row. I'll try not splatter you with.
One thing I wanted to show you, which I'm really love. In the back of each of my books, I have a baking playlist of Gaelic and traditional songs in the book. So while you're doing this, play the playlist as well, because I think you'll enjoy that.
So tell us a wee bit about who the bakers that you grew up with that inspired you. What kinds of things were they baking?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Who knows what a duff is? What's a duff? Correct. I think you mainlanders call it a clootie dumpling, don't you? Yes. And a duff, I would say, is the island's most classic bake. That's our favorite. And it really is quite a simple, it's a simple bake. It's a boiled fruit cake, but there's some things that are quite interesting about it. Who's made a clootie dumpling before? Did it work out well? No. No? What happened? Oh, I know. You've got to, it's a real challenge because it's a boiled fruit cake and you make it in a muslin. But one thing that's quite unique compared to traditional fruit cakes is it's got a skin on it. And you either love the skin or you don't, okay? I remember I was on my book tour in America and I was in Charlotte. And if I say the word cailleach, do you know what I'm meaning? Yes, you know what a cailleach is, yes. A mature lady. And she was sitting there and she had told me she was from Paisley, right? And so I said that. Has anybody heard of a clootie dumpling? And I was just about to wax lyrical about how wonderful the clootie dumpling is. She sat in the corner. Oh, I hate that, she says. I'm trying to make this sound good. I'm selling books here, you know. Anyway, my Aunt Bellac taught me to bake. She's now 95. Can you believe it? Still bakes every day. She's an absolute superstar. And she gave me the inspiration to start this whole journey of the Hebridean Baker. I was over at her house one day, and she had a clootie dumpling bubbling on the stove, and it happened to be her 65th wedding anniversary that day. And she said she'd been making it the same way for 80 years, her recipe, and even made it as her wedding cake on her wedding day. In the morning of her own wedding, she made the clootie dumpling for her wedding. And she was telling me kind of traditional stories and tell me about what kind of wedding traditions there were in those days. And I thought to myself, I don't want people on my island to forget, not my island, you know, the island of Lewis, to forget these stories, never thinking they would resonate across the world. And now I think is it 28.5 million people have watched those videos, which is just bonkers. And I definitely know there's not 28 million people in the Isle of Lewis. So there's some of you are watching it. So it's all down to my auntie. And so, as I said, we've creamed the butter and sugar here. I've got 4 eggs. And as in a classic sponge, it's kind of even. So 225 butter, 225 sugar, and when I put the flour in, the same 225 again. Okay? And 4 eggs.
So tell us a wee bit about some of the stories from across your books. What's your favourite story in the books?
Favourite stories? Well, for those of you who don't know, my mother was a Harris Tweed weaver. Actually, her and her brother, Cailleach, who I was named after. For those of you who don't know, I know Cailleach seems quite a strange name if you're not from Lewis. But most men on Lewis, we're not very creative with our names. You're either called Donald or Dole, Mordo, Cailleach. What else do we have? Maybe Seamus if you're fancy. You know, so Cailleach comes from the word cún, which is don't laugh, it's the Gaelic word for handsome. I was a very cute 2-day-old baby. It's definitely gone downhill since then. But my father was a fisherman. He had a boat in Stornoway. By the way, I'm putting the eggs in one at a time and just making sure they're all in before I put the next one. And so I definitely got my height from my mother. She was 5'11", and my storytelling from my father, luckily, because he was 5'6". So, and we are doing, by the way, a couple of events. Do we know the dates? We can say today, actually, tickets are now available for our event at Donnelly Castle. We're doing an event there. Do you know when it is?
Hold on, I'll just check the diary.
I will check. I should really plan these things ahead. We've got an event at Donnelly Castle on the 18th of November. Put it in your diaries. Tickets available today at Donnelly Castle, whatever. And it's a week early, and we're doing songs and stories. And now, it's outside, so it's going to be quite cold, so bring your jacket. But I think they're going to make it cute and festive and, you know, all those kind of things. So we'll tell a few stories there as well. But definitely the island is filled with characters and stories and myths and legends. What's your favorite?
Well, Furik, you were telling us about Cannach and your mother sharing a shed.
Yes.
Weaving in it.
Yes, they were weaving in it. Yeah. What else? Should I say something else?
You didn't finish this.
I know. I was going to save it for Donnelly Castle.
Oh.
I don't want to keep. I've got to keep something back. I want you to come back and see me. Are you sure?
Right.
Well, see if I tell it, and if I tell it at Donnelly Castle, will you listen to it a second time if I tell it twice? Right. Okay. I'm going to hold you to that. If none of you turn up for Donnelly Castle, I'll be cursing you. Anyway, well, my father, as I said, he certainly told the stories in the family, and he was a fisherman. So Sunday night he would go out in the big boat. By the way, if it looks like you ever curdle because when you put the eggs in, don't worry, because if you're going to put flour in next, it's going to all balance out. Don't worry about that. So my father was a fisherman. He would go out on a Sunday, come back on a Friday from his big boat. But on a Saturday, he would go out in his wee boat. So can I tell a wee story about one day when he went out fishing? Kerst. Okay. So picture it. 1986. He's rowing home. And we boat filled with shellfish and things from his creels. And then suddenly, out of the blue, all he feels is this big, where's my microphone? Crash, right? And he turns around and he realizes he's crashed into another boat. Not only has he, do you know this one, Stuart? Not only has he crashed into another boat, he's crashed into the Royal Yacht Britannia. And who's leaning over the side of the boat but the Queen and Princess Margaret? Okay. And the Queen looks over and goes, where have you been? He says to my father. And he says, oh, I've been out fishing. Then looks up and goes, why, where have you been? He says to the Queen. And the Queen says, we're on our holidays, she said. We're off to Balmoral. But we're broken down. Oh, he says, that's terrible. He says, do you have anything in for your tea? Now, according to my father, the Queen said no. Now, I'd be very surprised if the Queen left Buckingham Palace with nothing in for tea. But now, did I mention that my dad liked a dram or two? I should have maybe mentioned at the start of the story. So my father says, well, I've got lobsters, I've got shellfish here. Would you like something for your tea? Oh, the Queen said that would be just fantastic. Right then, so according to my father, he knew that Princess Margaret was quite adept at catching a rope. So he threw the rope up to Princess Margaret, he tied the creel, and Princess Margaret pulled the creel up onto the Royal Yacht Britannia. She opened the creel, shucked the creel, all the shellfish onto the deck, and then the Queen went, I'm the Queen. I don't carry any money. How am I going to pay you for this? And my father said, don't worry, it's a gift from the island. We hope you come back next year. And then Princess Margaret said, do you smoke? Now, my father, like most old fishermen, smoked old tobacco roll-up kind of things. But she had, as you've seen in The Crown, those fancy long cigarettes so she popped a packet of her big fancy cigarettes into the creel and threw it back down to him. So he rode home to the village, and now our house is near the end of the village. So what did he do? He went to the first house, told the story, got a dram of whiskey. Went to the second house, told the story, got another dram of whiskey. So you can imagine by the time he got back to our house, the story had, got quite wild. And actually, when I was doing research for the book, I went around the village asking, did anybody have any stories? And I went to see my old cousin Roderick, and she said, I hope you're not putting that story of your father and the Queen in the book. And I was like, well, you tell me your version of the story. And I realized that everybody in the village had a different version of the story, depending on how many drams he had had. So if he went to Roderick's house, in that story, Prince Philip was there as well. And he climbed into the boat and they went for a spin around the island. But if you go to number 5, they've got the best story because he was just about to say goodbye. And he heard the tune of A Dashing White Sergeant starting to play on the deck. And Princess Diana came and asked him to dance. Not sure if that's true or not, to be fair. But plenty of stories. Anyway, he came home and told the story to my poor suffering mother. She went, aha, very good, get to bed. And we didn't really think much more of it until 2 weeks later. I didn't mention as well, my father's name was Donald John MacLeod. And even though there's only 30 houses in the village, there's another 7 Donald John MacLeods in the village. As I said, not very creative with their names. And a man came from round the loch and said, I think this is for you. And there was a letter. And the address, Donald John MacLeod, Cremore, Isle of Lewis. And in the top right-hand corner, there was a stamp from Balmoral. So he opened the letter, and it said, Dear Mr. MacLeod, I hope, please apologize to your village if we caused any trouble when we broke down a couple of weeks ago. We feasted on your lobsters and shellfish that night, and it was the best meal we had on our way to Balmoral. See you next year, Queenie, or Lizzie, I can't remember how she signs her name. Anyway, and we all stood around going, he told the truth. He actually had met the Queen. And, well, I think I might be one of the only people in the world that can honestly say that my father gave the Queen crabs. And she said thank you as well. So that is a true story. If you do come and visit, we still have the letter up on the wall at home, so from the Queen. So.
I wonder if Charles and Camilla will stop in soon, King Charles.
That's true, actually. It's true. Now, while I'm on this, before I put the flour in, I actually like to put one of the flavors in first. It's easier to mix. Now, the first one is honey. I actually love using heather honey for this recipe. I think it's for those of you who haven't tried heather honey before, it's really stunning, very distinct compared to classic honey. Because what they do, like the Scottish Bee Company, who I really like, they're my favorite honey, what do you call them, growers? I don't know, makers.
I think the bees do it. But
the bees do a lot of the work, to be fair.
Beekeepers.
Beekeepers, that's the word. They lift the beehives from where they are normally up to the moors, to the heather winds in bloom. And the flavor and the fragrance is so different compared to classic honey. So try heather honey, and you can, because my shortbread is for sale today, and we have got heather honey shortbread. Keep that in mind. So that's in there, so I'll just whisk that around first. And then the second flavor, which I'll put it in after the flour, is the lemon, of course. So that's all mixed in there.
So growing up in Cremore, I know that this cake's taking a very long time. You don't normally take this
long to make.
No,
this is so easy to make. I'm usually not telling all the stories.
Not as much blethering happens when you're... Tell us a wee bit about Gaelic in the Western Isles, and Gaelic in Scotland, but you grew up in a Gaelic-speaking household.
Yes. So, fel Gaelic agad? Oh, gleda. That's a good start. Well, for those of you who don't, there's only 60,000 of us in the world that have Gaelic. And so it's an important thing for us to do both things. Firstly, speak the language. But also, nearly when you speak Gaelic, you sort of have to be an ambassador for the language as well. you know. It's kind of incumbent upon us to be kind of proud Gaelic speakers. There's about 54,000 Gaelic speakers in Scotland and about 6,000 in Cape Breton, in Nova Scotia, in Canada. Has anybody been to Cape Breton? Have you? Isn't it amazing? What a place. And if you remember, there was a band called the Rankin Family, showing my age a wee bit. They have a pub in Mabu in Cape Breton called the Red Shoe. And I remember going in there and the barman speaking Gaelic. And it's actually quite emotional, to be honest with you, going across the world and being able to speak your own language, you know, in Canada. I just thought that was really special. So for us, you know, it's an important language that we use at home every day. And is there anybody singing at the Mod next month? Uh-huh. For those of you who don't know, the Mod is a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, but less fireworks, more kilts is the best way to describe it. But it is a week-long event. Now, that was 225 grams of self-raising flour with a teaspoon of baking powder going in. You can join a choir. Choir is one of the most fun things you can do. I've been part of choirs for, 20, 30 years. There are choir competitions, there are solo competitions, there are folk groups, there's dancing, and it's got
the whiskey Olympic element as well.
There is plenty drinking involved as well. Great ceilidhs in the evenings. It's in a different town or city in Scotland every year. It's been 150 years, something like that.
140, did I hear?
140, yeah. It's been going for a wee while. And this year, well, a few years ago, was it 2016 or 17? 2017. Peter and I entered the duet competition together. Now,
we didn't enter together. He entered us without telling me. And then we
potato. And then, much to the shock of, definitely for the shock of us, but definitely the shock of the audience, we won with a beautiful Canadian Gaelic song called Tal na Bain na Gurima. Then we entered the next year and we came second with a song called Bu Oli Cleoj. And then last year we entered a song called Erskan and Imichlín. That is a Robbie Burns song. Can anybody guess what Erskan and Imichlín is in English? What Robbie Burns song do you think it is? Shout out. An Corran carges Collergy. It's like singing that bad. Anybody recognize that tune?
For All Lang Syne, yes.
All Lang Syne, yes. Gee whiz, I've got some practice to do before next month. And we came fourth. Most people get better, we're getting worse. But we're actually singing against each other this year.
It's getting serious.
It's like Pop Stars, the Rivals. We are singing in the solo competition called the Push the BL. Peter, tell them a little bit about what Push the BL is.
So Push the BL is mouth music. So the songs don't always make complete sense, but people would use them to dance to at ceilidhs if there weren't any instruments around. So yeah, they're fun to sing. They're Gaelic tongue twisters.
And which one are you singing?
This time?
Yes.
I'm not telling you.
Oh. It is quite difficult. I haven't heard him sing, like it's in 3 weeks, I haven't heard him sing his.
It's true. Normally in our house, there's a lot of practicing going on
Yes.
together at this point, and this time it's been quite secretive, so yeah, I'm not telling him what song I'm singing.
Well, I will tell you.
What one are you singing?
I can't remember.
Well, that's good.
No, they actually...
Keep it that way.
Nobody was on Seal last night watching Dive, were they, by any chance? Was anybody at the concert in Seal? My cousin, Mordo Yogi, is in the band Dive, who had a sold-out concert on Seal last night, and I chose one of their songs. Well, one of the songs that they sing. Of course, Portugal are very traditional songs, but I chose one of theirs. So, look at this. The last thing I'm putting in is the zest of a lemon. Because remember, this is a hot toddy cake, so we need the honey and the lemon to go into the cake. And for you bakers, you know this, but the zest of the lemon has much more flavor than the juice, okay, particularly when you're baking. And so I'm just going to stir that together. And that is it. Now, if I hadn't been talking and telling stories for the last half hour, that would have taken me probably about 4.5 minutes to do. But it took a wee bit longer than that. Now, I must admit, it's a very simple cake, but because I'm going to do an icing on it, I wanted to have a wee bit more drama. So I'm going to use my bundt tin. Now, this is quite a simple one because I was traveling, so I needed to pack it up into my bag. But these are handy, these silicone ones. But if you want something a bit fancier, there's a brand called Nordic Ware. I don't know if you've heard of Nordic Ware. They're quite fancy, but you can buy them in TK Maxx. So always keep an eye out in TK Maxx or Nordic. I always find them there because they can be a wee bit pricey sometimes. But if you're in TK Maxx, then keep your eye out for some Nordic Ware. So that's it. I'm going to put this in, but actually, Peter, you put that in to bake.
Okay.
No pressure. Now, you know that moment where I kind of walk off and then time just stands still and disappears? Can you all close your eyes for just a few seconds? And can you believe it? You just thought that was a couple of seconds, but that was actually 37 minutes.
Yeah, it's not even in the tin yet.
No, but I wanted to show you. I'll put this here for you to see. This is the finished hot toddy bun cake here, but it's not fully finished yet, okay? Because I'm going to do a wee bit of icing for the cake as well. And the icing, the good thing is, waste not, want not. I'm going to use the juice of the lemon. Now, of course, you can serve it just like this, of course, as well. But, as I said, because it's a hot toddy cake, I want to get the other flavor that we haven't got yet in there, which is the ushkebehe, okay? So the first thing to do, you know what? See with sieving, I wouldn't say I sieve my flour every time, but I definitely sieve my icing sugar every time. Because you know what? It can get quite lumpy and all joined together. Thank you.
Is that going in there?
No, I don't know if that actually works.
It does.
So I'm going to put about 200 grams of icing sugar in here. And then simply I'm going to, oh, how dramatic. I'm going to put the lemon juice and the whiskey in to make icing on top.
Very good. So tell us a wee bit about some of the other types of recipes that you have in your book. Is it all cakes, or do you have puddings, or are we going to set the fire alarm off with sugar?
As a baker, definitely my favorites is the cakes, bakes, puddings, biscuits, and all those things. But in my second book that I've got with me today, I've got one of my favorite chapters, actually. It's a chapter, because most of my stuff is Scottish, but because we look north quite a lot, you know, put into context, the Isle of Lewis is closer to the south coast of Iceland than the south coast of England, okay? So we do look north for a lot of our recipes. So I've got a chapter of Scandinavian recipes in my book as well. Nordic, not just Scandinavian, Nordic recipes in my book. In my new book, I've got a chapter of Celtic bakes. Oh, I've got a wind machine as well, it's amazing. A chapter of Celtic bakes in my new book coming out as well. But I always put a chapter of savory dishes in. And in my book here, I have a chapter of bread and scones as well. So it's a real mix of
And cocktails.
Oh, and cocktails. Yes, you are right. There's some great cocktails. So that's about 200 grams of the icing sugar. And this is when I need to measure, okay? Because I'm in theory going to put, well, let's test it out. It really is to your flavor, but I think it's going to be about 3, now I don't know if it's tablespoons or teaspoons. Will you check?
Is it in
I
that
think,
one?
yeah, I think it's tablespoons.
I mean, you can't put too much whiskey anyway,
I
can
think
you?
it's teaspoons. Let's check. Just check. I don't want to blow anybody's head off. It's near the start. Right, I'm going to put 1 tablespoon in anyway. I think it's, I'll put 2 in, just, you know. Look, I always say, I'm not trying to make you a Michelin star chef. I'm trying to make you 3 what?
Teaspoons.
Right, kids. Don't blame me. So that's okay. Three teaspoons is 1 tablespoon, isn't it? So and then the lemon as well. Now, actually, that probably won't be enough. So we can start to. This is when you just check yourself if it's going to come together. What you wanted to do, might need the wind machine back again. What you wanted to do is quite thick, but pourable, because I'm going to pour it over the cake for that kind of extra little bit of drama on top of the cake. I think that might. What do you think? That might
Looks
be
good.
okay. Yeah.
So what exciting things have you got coming up in your life as the Hebridean Baker?
Well, there's always exciting things in our lives. Well, for a start, thank you very much. Could you come on my book tour with me? That's better. So, as I said, the new book comes out on the 12th of October, which is very exciting indeed. That day, I'm appearing on the TV show This Morning. So if you are pootling about the house that morning, switch on the telly, and I'll be baking on This Morning. And then I start the book tour. And the book tour, I'm on tour for about 7 weeks. Oban twice. I said Oban twice. I'm doing an event at Waterstones one day, and that is the two of us, because Peter, I don't know if you know, also has a book coming out. Tell us about that, Peter.
Well, I don't know, some people in Oban might know that my father, Graham Mcqueen, built a hut down near to the Isle of Seal a few years ago. And so our family have been embracing the Caledonian-style cabin life, which we call hutting in Scotland. So actually, I was getting a lift with Caniach's publisher one day, and I was waxing lyrical about the hut. And she said, do you know, this could maybe be something for you. So yeah, it's been a wee whirlwind year of getting that ready, and it's gone to the printers last Friday, and it comes out on the 9th of November, so I'm very excited. And I consider myself the second generation hutter. Really, my dad is the primary hutter in our family, but yeah, anyone that has a hut
book.
or a cabin.
If you have ever dreamed of the good life, I think of myself as Felicity Kendall. This is Richard Bryars, for those of you who know who that is. But if you ever aspire to that, then it's a great book to have. So we'll be doing a couple of events together in Oban. And I've a few things going on. I was filming with, if you're into Lord of the Rings, I was filming with two of the hobbits from Lord of the Rings a couple of weeks ago, Merry and Pippin, for their TV show. So that's going to come out soon. And then for
Two breakfasts.
I made them second breakfast. And then I've got my American book tour. I've got 3. If you have American friends, tell them I'm doing a 15-city book tour in February. And then I'm doing a tour of Highland Games in July and a month in September. So I'll be coming to visit the US and Canada quite a lot. So, look, is the camera ready for the big moment? Yeah. Let's see if this works. I'll put it on that one, okay? So this is it. This is the most simple icing. And it's about the right texture. Can you see the kind of texture there of what it should come out like? Okay? Let's just taste. But I put a wee bit. That's definitely a whiskey icing. It was supposed to be 1 tablespoon. I put in 2. But it's not. No, it's got a nice warmth to it, actually. That's good. But what I'll do is, because I'd love you to come down and taste the cakes, I'll ice one of them, and I'll keep the second one plain. So if you're, because don't drive after. I'm only kidding. It's not that bad. And with all bundt cakes, you just love the drama of seeing that kind of like just kind of going down. And there you go. Isn't that pretty? There we go. So that is my hot toddy bundt cake. And it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today. But we did say we've got 5 minutes or so. So does anybody have any questions or comments before you come down and try the cake? Put your hand up if you have any. Yes, madam. Anywhere you want. You can buy it today from me here. But when the new book comes out, they'll be in Waterstones. Now, what's that beautiful shop in Oban as well? that sells my shortbread and books.
Alba.
Alba. You can buy them at Alba as well. And of course, if you want to pre-order, they're on Amazon as well. But I will be doing, let me tell you when our Oban Waterstones event is too. That is, do you know when it is, Peter?
10th of November. The 10th of November.
10th of November. So 10th of November is just a walk in, get your book signed, that kind of thing. And then the 18th of November is the Denali Castle, where you can come and have a
Which is part of the Oban Winter Festival.
It's part of the Oban Winter Festival.
We're getting near to Christmas.
Exactly. Yes. Any other questions? Yes, madam.
When will you be having your own YouTube show or your own?
Well, this is the TV star here, to be fair. Peter has his own TV show on BBC Alba called Gara Fadrig, Peter's Garden. We're filming the 3rd series at the moment. It is in Gaelic, but there is subtitles.
However, Cynach is being followed by a crew for a Christmas special
about that.
About the Hebridean Baker.
Yes,
which is going out on BBC Alba at Christmas time.
Yeah, you're right,
this year.
actually. God, I did totally forget about that. Yes, I've got a TV show called Misha Baker in Yelan. I'm the Hebridean Baker, coming out at Christmas time on BBC Alba. So keep your eye out for that. But no, Face for Radio. I have my own. I've got a new podcast going to be launched in January, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be called Scottish Island Adventures. And I've spent the last about 3.5 months traveling around 10 different Hebridean islands, meeting different folk and characters. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So that's going to be launched in January as well on the usual Spotifys and Apple. So please tune in for that as well. Now, I saw a wee hand going up somewhere. Who else had a question?
She never mentioned you, sorry.
Thanks. Yes. See, you're the star. Well, actually, technically,
we were actually in US. What's DJ's mum called again?
Tell her that
Bella
Bella
Cameron.
Cameron is going to be in my new book.
So we arrived at her house and she came over to the van and she said to me, "Oh, I love your gardening program." And then we got inside the house and she sat in right close to me with his book and started going through saying, "What about that one? What about that one? What about that one?" And eventually it dawned on me that she thought I was the baker. So I told her and she was like, "Oh, dash it." And she got up straight away and went over to him. It was hilarious.
No, but one thing I love doing, and you'll see it in all the books, is meeting and getting different stories and recipes from different people on the islands. And particularly in my new book, which is called Hebridean Baker at Home, is visiting different people in their homes. And Bella is one of them. And that was the best day ever. The photo, when you, I'm going to say when, not if, when you get the new book, the photo of myself and Bella, who's in her 80s and still is the cook at Gregory Lodge. Gregory Lodge, sorry, on Uist. So you totally put me off there, I was going to say. Yes, it was my favorite photo in the book. It just encapsulates everything that I want in the book. So when you see it, hopefully it makes you smile, that one. So, but there's one person that isn't here today. You were asking who, the celebrities. The most famous person, you all know who that is, isn't it? Shorus, yes. I can see the disappointment in your eyes that Shorus isn't here. We weren't allowed, he is in Oban, but we weren't too sure if he was allowed to come to the food festival, so he's sitting by the stove, I think, just now. But yes, Shorus does still sign the books, even when he's not here, so Shorus will sign the books for you as well. So, any other questions before we finish? Yes, ma'am.
I've only just started baking recently, and I noticed that you didn't grease the pan or anything, and I just wondered if that was because it was silicone.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'll blame Peter for that. But no, you actually with silicone you really don't need to, particularly because there's so much butter in that one. But absolutely, and traditionally you would kind of grease and line the tin. But with silicone, and particularly with a very buttery cake like that one, actually you really don't need to at all. Funnily enough, I did this one, and then I didn't this one, because I ran out of butter. So you can see that's a little bit darker, not because it was any longer or there was different circumstances, but just you see there, it's just got a little bit of the butter on the rings there. But these ones, I must admit, those, I mean, that was £6, that silicone, just from Amazon, you know. So these are so handy, but you shouldn't need to butter it if it's a really nice buttery cake. Any other questions before we finish? Oh, thanks, Stuart. Stuart wants to go home. That's Peter's uncle telling us it's time to go. But what I'd love you to do, please, I'm going to slice the cake. Please come down and get a slice of cake if you'd like one. I will be here as well selling the books and the shortbread. So if you would like to buy some shortbread or books, please come down. Or if you just want to come down and say hello, please do that as well. But thank you so much, everybody. Good to meet you all. Would you be okay slicing the cake?
Yep.
So come on and try a piece of the cake.